everyone. Welcome to GlideFast On Air. Today's webinar, The Trifecta, New York-Presbyterian Solution for Incident Transfer and Search Across 3 Instances. I'm Lauren Jankowski, the Marketing Specialist here at GlideFast, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. I'm excited to introduce to you today's presenters. David Arbor, a Senior ServiceNow Architect at GlideFast, Ed Shea, a Service Delivery Manager at GlideFast, and Smit Patel, a Senior Technical Consultant at GlideFast. Before we get started, we'd like to give you some background information on GlideFast Consulting. GlideFast is a consulting firm that is dedicated exclusively to ServiceNow. As an Elite ServiceNow Partner, our expert team of developers and architects have worked on both sides of the table, on the customer side and the consulting side. Our company was founded by ServiceNow architects, and we're proud to have a team of over 100 experienced consultants, an average CSAT score of a 9.6, and more accolades as you can see here. We'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout today's session, so please send in any questions as they arise, and we'll do our best to answer them. As another perk of attending today's webinar, we'll be giving away a $50 Visa gift card. We'll announce the winner at the end of today's session. Now, we'd like to hand things over to our presenters to dive in.
Thank you, Lauren. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. Before jumping into the case study here, first slide here, who is New York-Presbyterian? Just a little background on the client landscape here. So New York-Presbyterian is an academic healthcare delivery system located in Manhattan, but locations throughout the New York City metropolitan area. A little bit about the organization from a kind of healthcare perspective, about 2,600 hospital beds, over 6,500 affiliated physicians and 20,000 employees, and they see about 2 million visits annually within their hospital system. They are rated the #1 hospital system in New York, and they make the top 10 best hospital list across the United States. Within this case study, just want to call out they have a collaboration with 2 Ivy League medical schools, Weill Cornell Medicine and Columbia University Irving Medical Center. So jumping into the NYP Opportunity, so given NYP's collaboration with Weill Cornell Medicine and Columbia University Irving Medical Center, NYP was looking for a solution to effectively manage, and when I say manage, triage and track incidents that originated in an instance that wasn't NYP, and manage across those 3 institutions while also improving the end user experience, when an incident is open, to getting updates and resolving that incident. And through those conversations, understanding, what NYP was looking for, there was 3 major pain points that we identified that were pretty consistent across New York-Presbyterian, Weill Cornell, and Columbia. First one being help desk staff could not manage and triage incident tickets effectively across the 3 institutions. So for instance, if an incident was opened by a New York-Presbyterian doctor or staff member in the NYP instance, but after the New York-Presbyterian help desk realized or reviewed and determined it was actually an incident that belonged to Weill Cornell, there was no great way to triage that ticket over to the Weill Cornell help desk. And it was a cumbersome process, and it wasn't efficient enough to kind of work that incident. Second pain point, lack of search and traceability. There was no intuitive way to track or update newly created incidents in another institution's instance. So if we take the scenario I just described in the first pain point, where that NYP doctor or staff member opened the incident in the New York-Presbyterian help desk, it was transferred to Weill Cornell in some way, that doctor or staff member would call back to the New York-Presbyterian help desk and look for an update on the incident they created, but the New York-Presbyterian help desk would not have, say, the most up-to-date work notes, where the incident was, what was going on with it. So there was almost this lack of communication or way to update the end users. And then number 3, help desks at each of the institutions were using email and phone calls to transfer an incident that required the other institution to work. And I touched upon this a little bit in the second pinpoint, but yeah, so going back to the original scenario, once an incident was identified and triaged to another institution or organization, the way the help desks transferred was by email or by phone call, and that wasn't always the best way to do that. So that was the overall opportunity and the pain points and kind of what NewYork-Presbyterian was looking for. GlideFast Engagement. So NewYork-Presbyterian engaged GlideFast, and we partnered together with collaboration, Weill Cornell and Columbia University to build out the requirements and develop a proof of concept leveraging the ServiceNow incident workflows. We spent a good amount of time on site in Manhattan with the GlideFast team through workshops. We had many virtual workshops working through a number of proof of concepts, and the time was required because we were not only creating a solution for NewYork-Presbyterian, but we also needed input from Weill Cornell and Columbia University, their help desk stakeholders, process owners, their own development teams, our architects on their side. So there was a lot of coordination that was required, not only from NYP, but across the three organizations and various teams throughout the beginning of that project, and determining what the best solution was, what the best solution is for those requirements. And one of the biggest challenges with the development was that coordination, and as you could just imagine, determining the requirements, but also we developed the solution in a single instance, and then had to coordinate user acceptance testing. We had to coordinate, working through defects with Weill Cornell and Columbia development teams, releasing multiple iterations of this product. It was just a lot of coordination, and it was very successful. So right now I'm going to hand it over to David Arbor, who's going to talk through kind of the big four requirements that came out of those sessions that we had on site and virtually. So David, take it away.
Yeah. Hey everyone, David Arbor here. So just to sort of add to what Ed was saying there. So the overall requirement here was that NYP needed to be able to take a chunk of incidents that they would typically work, in a period of time, and those incidents may or may not need to be transferred from NYP to one of the other institutions, or back from one of the other institutions to NYP. And so, there was a real challenge there because we didn't know beforehand what's going to be transferred or what could even potentially be transferred. So we couldn't really flag things as, hey, this might be a transfer. And one of our initial thoughts on this was that we were going to create copies of incidents in all three instances so that they would be there. And when we transferred them, we would just basically update a state. And that was sort of our first solution, and that really wasn't something that we went with because we're talking about millions of incidents here per year. So it ended up not being a good viable solution. So what we ended up coming with was our solution was, okay, let's do this two ways. Let's do sort of a two-pronged approach here. The first part is going to be the actual transfer piece, to where within the normal fulfiller UI of ServiceNow, we can transfer incidents from instance to instance, or organization to organization. And then we wanted to provide them a way to search for those incidents across all three institutions. So we kind of knew from the beginning when we decided there was going to be a search piece to it, that was going to be a widget, something in their portal. And so that's what we went with. And so basically what we're going to do here is I'm going to pass this on to Smit here in a moment, Smit Patel. And so Smit is going to go over the transfer piece of that. So that sort of half of things. And then he's going to pass it back to me, and I'll talk about the search tool and how we built that. And these are going to be primarily demos that we're going to show you guys how, sort of how it works. So yeah, that's the overarching requirement slash solutions that we came up with. And now we'll show you how we implemented them. Smit, you want to take it over?
Sure. Thanks, David. All right. So as David and I had mentioned, the biggest challenge is we didn't want to hard code a bunch of things into script includes and so forth. So the main goal of the solution was, how can we make this a configuration-based setup where you would have a table, you go in there, set some properties, and that's all you would have to do if you want to make some changes, or if you want to add a new instance that you want to e-bond with and so forth. To transfer incidents between instances, we're using UI actions and REST APIs calls between those. So whenever you would click that UI action, it would go ahead and then make that call so that we have set up in the back end to connect with the other instance. So let me go ahead and give a demo of that functionality. All right. So I mentioned something about a configuration table earlier where we call that remote instances. So basically what that is just a number of records that you want to integrate with. So for example, this is a PDI that we're using for our demo with NYP's instance. So in here, basically we come in, we fill out what the instance is, who could transfer to what the URL is of that instance, the namespace, and so forth. So all these properties we're using in our code on the back end to make sure the transfers are smooth and make sure the instruments are keeping in sync. A couple of things that we had to keep in mind was the state field, for example, is a primary field that every instance has their own definition of what is an open field versus what's a closed versus what is a work in progress. So we decided to have these fields here where we're defining, okay, state field, what the name or the backend name is, and then what are the open states, what are the resolved states, what are the closed states. So this will help us to match those states whenever we're transferring incidents over. And with this type of configuration base, as you can see, you could have as many instances that you want to connect with, and there's no limitation really on what you could connect with. So let's go ahead and transfer an incident. So I'll go to my PDI real quick. So this is my PDI where basically what we're going to be doing right now is trying to transfer an incident to the NYP's environment. So just fill out the mandatory fields. On air transfer demo one. And then we'll go ahead and save that. So as you see now, there's a UI action here that says transfer to NYP. So at this point, I'll go ahead and click that, and it'll ask me to make sure that I'm doing what I want to do. And we get a message saying, if it was not successfully transferred, we would get an error message, but in this case it was. So as you see the message here. And one key feature that we wanted to include is, so for example, once the incident is transferred over, we didn't want the user on the primary or the source instance to be able to change the field, so that way there's no conflicting information when whoever from whichever help desk is given that information. So we go ahead and make all the fields read-only, so that way only the incident that this incident is active in will only be able to work through that. We also decided to add some fields here for specifically to the transfer information, so we could keep track on what's going on with this incident. So in this case, since I transferred this incident over to NYP, the state will be transferred. And the cool thing is it also tells you what is the source. So the source incident is 0010. So as you see, it has a prefix for which instance it came from and what the incident number is, and also where did it transfer to. So for example, we sent this to NYP, and the NYP's incident number is this. So since we're not copying all the instances to begin with, we had to come up with a system to track all these individual incident numbers. So when David will mention the search tool later, you'll be able to see how the hierarchy is built and so forth. So let me just quickly go to NYP's incident. I'll just bring these side by side so we can see the comparison of both. All right, so as you see, the incident that was transferred over to NYP, it does not have all read-only fields. All the fields that were on the PDI 1 or 2 were transferred over. There's a couple of fields that weren't because we don't transfer those over because I didn't fill out the information on my end. So I'm just going to quickly do that. All right, so just save that. Okay. So one key feature was to make sure that whenever I transfer an incident from one instance over to another, we have this first initial work note that we're transferring stating, okay, what are the fields that were already populated on one instance? So that way you don't have to go back and forth saying what was populated or what came from another instance versus what was handled on my instance with rules and so forth. So that was a cool feature that we had established. Also, if I go to the same transfer information tab, you will see the different values. So on this case, since NYP received the incident, the state is received, and we also have something called transfer count. So it will say how many times this incident is being transferred over. So currently it was once, so it's one there. Same information on what the source is and then where the incident came from. Another thing that we had to do was with additional comments or work notes. So as you see, let me just pull up notes here. So even though all my fields on this PDI instance are read-only, we've kept the work notes and additional comments free because if I want to, let's say, ask for an update from NYP, I would just simply say, hey, customer is on the call. Is there an update? And as you see, it just pops right over to the NYP instance. So that way it's easier to get updates. It's easier to get notes. And the notifications that the customer gets is always from the primary or the source instance. So for example, if I had to put something, let's say I got an update from NYP saying, the incident is being worked on. We should have an update in 30 minutes. So this, if there's any notifications on the source instance, the customer will automatically get that. So then, they don't have to worry about calling back or anything like that if for some reason they have to leave the call to attend some of their businesses. So that's some cool features that we've added there just so everything's in sync and good over there. So let's now try to transfer the NYP instance over to PDI1 and see what behaviors we see with that. All right, so now you see the same read-only field because now this incident was transferred over because the NYP was working on it, was, okay, wait, it has to go to a different company or a different institution to get worked on. So then they would transfer it over. And as you see in the transfer hierarchy, now we have where it's being transferred to. And if I refresh here, let me pull up the PDI one. All right, so as you can see, the fields were transferred over, and then you also get both sets of work notes. So what were the fields when it was first transferred over? What happened during that time? So we had added the comment, hey, customer is on the call, is there an update? So it brings up all the historical data from one instance to the next, and the last instance, wherever this resides, will have all that information. So if I'm a help desk technician at this third instance, all I have to do is just go through the work notes and see what's going on. So it's fairly simple as that. I think that's about all I have on my transfer piece. David, do you have anything you want to add to this transfer piece?
Maybe just show the transfer information tab there in PDI-1.
Okay, yep, yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. The tab here, the important thing to see here is the transfer form. So as you see, the hierarchy is being built where, it was sent from PDI-2 to NYP, and now it's residing in my PDI-1. So David will go over later on how this is an important factor into how the portal side comes through and how that is determined there. So, yep, well, with that, I'll go ahead and pass on to David.
Awesome. And David, before you get started, I think we just had one question come in. What happens when the incident gets resolved? Does the source system get updated?
Yes. So we have business rules in place, and that's when I showed that state field, where we're matching states to state. That's the key factor into when something is resolved somewhere, we want to make sure we cycle it through all the different places that the incident resided. So that's the key factor into ensuring that when one gets resolved, all the rest get resolved also.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons we're mapping those fields, the state field in the configuration record, because a resolved state in instance A may be a different resolved state in instance B. So that's helping us figure out what actually is a resolved state and closed state. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the search tool, the search functionality that we built as part of this as well. So like the transfer functionality, this is configuration based. So I'll show you actually those same configuration records that Smith showed you, but I'm going to show you a few other pieces of data that they hold that helps us with the search tool. It's built as a single page application. So this is a single widget on a single page. And that's how it works. It's AngularJS, JavaScript, and we're using REST APIs to do the searches. So both the transfers and the searches are all done through REST APIs. Even if we're searching for something on the local instance, if we're searching for an incident on the local instance, which they will show up, you'll see that in a moment, that's still using the REST API to actually grab that information because we wanted a consistent way to grab the information. Okay. So I've got a split screen going on here. I've got NYP here on the left, and then I've got my PDI and Smith's PDI over here on the right. So the first thing I wanted to show you was, like Smith showed you, we've got these configuration records. So obviously, like Smith told you, we've got the URL of the other instance. We've got a namespace for API, for attachment API information. We've got an auth profile. So the login information is all posted there. And one of the other things here I wanted to point out is that we have a list here of the different instances based on their codes that they can transfer to. So the requirement here was that one institution, either Weill Cornell or Columbia, could transfer to NYP, and then NYP could transfer to either of those institutions, but they could not transfer to each other. So when we built this, we had to put that in place to where we could easily configure that. So right now this is set up to go to all four from NYP. But if we look at another record here, we can see that this one, PDI-1, is only set up to go to NYP, which is the reason when you come to PDI-1 here, it only has one button, transfer to NYP, right? But if we were in NYP and looking at the same instance or incident, we would see all the buttons that it would go to, okay? And then we've got, let's see, the other pieces that I wanted to show in here, that incident properties we already went over. So I think that's it. We do have the color here. One of the key pieces here was in the search tool, we want to be able to tell very quickly what institution something belongs to or what instance something belongs to. So we gave each one a color, and these are their branded colors for the different organizations, and that's defined in here. Okay, so real quickly here, I'm going to go to this remote search tool. Remote and it's under service desk. We have a remote search tool here, so the service desk can come and actually do searches on their incidents. So what I'll do here, this is the incident that Smith sent to NYP. So this one is actually right now, just for context, it came from PDI 2 to NYP, and then NYP transferred it to PDI 1. So over here in PDI 1 is where it's actually active. Okay, so I'm going to grab the incident number real quick, and we're going to put it in our search tool, and let's see what we get. Okay, cool. So we got our incident, right? We can see that in this search tool here, we have multiple setups, right? So it searched NYP, it searched PDI 1, and it searched PDI 2. It did not find any results at PDI 2, and it did not find results at NYP. It only found results in PDI 1. And the reason that is because PDI 1 right now is the quote unquote active instance. So it's the instance where this transfer can be worked on, where it's active, okay? So a few key features here of the search tool. We can see the short description and the number right off the bat. We can see that what instance it's in with that color coding that I mentioned before. And we can expand and collapse things so we can make this, more readable as we need to. Because a lot of times when you search an incident here, you're going to get multiples because, especially low number incidents like this, because instances all go through those low number incidents at some point, right? And so they show up. So anyway, we can see here too that this incident has been transferred 2 times. If it is more than 2 times, and this was another requirement from the customer, if it's more than 2 times, this is going to show up in red, because at that point they want to know, hey, we need to do something about that if it's been transferred more than 2 times. From here, we can expand our view of the PDI 1 instance. So we can see our comments here. So the comments that are showing over here, we can see them here, and we can see our work notes here as well. And we can easily add work notes and comments from here as well. So we don't have access to go into the actual incident record from here because we're not in the right instance, but we can see everything that we need to see, and we can communicate with the customer everything we need to communicate with the customer. So I'll collapse that. So now I'll show you the transfer. So we also have this expandable area here that shows us the 2 transfers that these came from. So we can see it came from PDI 2, it was transferred to NYP, and then from NYP, it came to PDI 1. Now, this is what Smith showed you where we have a hierarchy that gets built, but it's not, I don't know that I call it true hierarchy, because if this were to get transferred again, it would only show, we only have 3 total instances in our grouping here, right? So it's not gonna show that it was at PDI 2, then NYP, then PDI 1, and then back to NYP. It's only gonna show the last 2 places it was at, right? Now, if you had 5 different instances configured here to do all these transfers, it would show all of those if it went through all of those. That's sort of how that works. So here's our transfers. Now, since we are local to NYP, we can see that we have a button here that says open transfer. And so that'll actually take us to the incident record itself, where we can then do what we need to do with work notes and comments, because we're not adding those over here, because we can open it. Now, since this one's in PDI 2, and we can't actually go to it, we do have that same option to expand and look at the comments and work notes so we can make informed decisions on this incident. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, I will do real quick, I'll show you as well, that we can search not only by incident, we can also search by name. So username, that's what this is, Seaweed or Uni, it's actually username. So a key point that I'm not sure that we pointed out initially is that all 3 of these institutions share users that do not have the same SysID, but they will have the same user ID, which is what allows us to search across all instances. So we can put my user ID in here, and there we go. It's going to bring back all incidents that, not only incidents that we're talking about right now, but incidents that are open in any of these instances. So we can see that these 4 that showed up are all just things that I've tested with that do not have any transfers associated with them, because you don't see the transfer link underneath. So you can just collapse that and get rid of that, and then see the one that we really want to look at. Right, so I want to do this real quick so we know that this incident is live over here in PDI1 right now, but I'm going to transfer it back to NYP. So we make a full circle here. I'm actually going to add a work note here. Transferring back to NYP for work. So first off, you can see if we come down here in PDI1, I'm sorry, let's see.
It's the wrong incident, I think.
Oh, wait. Is it? What's this one?
I think it's
018. Oh, it is. It is. I'm looking at the wrong one. Yep. Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
All right. So this is it.
I think the search was just the wrong one, but
I see. I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Let me go back to 18. It's because it's in Smith's name and not my name, and I was thinking it was in my name. Okay. Back to 18. And PDI2. Okay, so I'm going to transfer this back now. Again, remember we have PDI1 here as the top incident right now because it's the incident where it's active. So I'm going to take this one and transfer it back to NYP. Okay, so it's been transferred. We can see here when we refresh that this incident is now showing returned. We have a transfer count of 3. Again, our transfer source initially was PDI2. We transferred to PDI1 at one point, and then the last two instances it's at in were PDI1 and PDI2. Okay, so now when we search for this incident, we're going to get a slightly different view. So now we see that NYP is the active instance, and so it's the one that shows up first. It's the one where it shows up for you to view. And again, since we're in NYP now, we can open incident with this button, and we can still view our transfers, our 2 transfers, and get all the information that we need. So this fulfilled the requirement. Another thing, or all of the requirements. So another thing that I don't know that we talked about enough prior to this was how difficult this was to develop, because we were developing in one instance where we did not have access to the other instances to do development work, and we did later, but not right at first. So we really didn't have a way to test. So we had to develop everything in NYP's instance against our PDIs, like we're showing you now. But obviously PDIs aren't going to be the same thing as customer instances. So when we got to the customer instances, we actually had very, very few problems, a few tweaks that we had to do, but overall everything was done in one large update set. And that was the goal, because we didn't want to have to push multiple update sets to multiple teams. So everything was done in one update set. And we've had multiple enhancements since then, but initially it was all done in one update set. So yeah, so this is the tool. This fulfilled the customer's requirements. It's been very useful. I think our original volume of incidents transferred per year when we initially talked to them was 150 to 200. It was not that many, but I think last number I heard whenever I talked to them was it was in the thousands, because they now have the ability to do that, to do these transfers without major issues along the way. Smith, is there anything I missed?
No, but I think we should add the attachment piece. So
oh yeah,
sure. I think I forgot to mention that. So if you just want to demo that, that's fine.
Yeah, so the active right here, let's go ahead and add an attachment. It's just going to be a random attachment. I don't know what this attachment is, but we're going to put it on here anyway. Yeah, so not only are we transferring work notes and comments, but we're also transferring attachments. So here's the attachment. We just attached it in this instance. It transferred over to this one. And if we look at PDI2, Smith's PDI, we should see the attachment here as well. Now, the requirement from the customer on this one was that if we if we add an attachment anywhere, they're going to show up on all of them. But deletion of a attachment should only occur, or should only propagate to the other instances if it occurs on the instance that's active. So if I delete this here, and I will, we remove it here from PDI2, we're going to see that it's still here in PDI1, and that it's still here in the NYP instance. We have to remove it from the live one for it to cut out from all of them. And another little cool feature is it from any instance. So let me do it over here. Well, sorry, y'all. Oh, there we go. So if I rename here, it actually propagates over as well. Oh, sorry. There we go. And it renamed to AA2.jpg. So renaming, actually making the attachments and the deletion if it's the active incident as well. So work notes, comments, some states, or the states when they go into resolved or closed, and key pieces of information that they need, like short description, who the user is, things like that. They all transfer over. Smith, anything else?
No, I think that's all about this too, and what we've accomplished at this NYP.
Okay, I think that leaves us open for Q&A. Do you want me to pass it back to you?
We do have a couple of questions coming in. Here's the first one. Can you transfer incident back to the originating source system?
Yes. As David just demoed, he was able to transfer it back to NYP, and from NYP, he could transfer it back to the PDI2. So yes, that's possible.
The only thing limiting you on where you can transfer it is what we had set up in those configuration files as to what was a valid receiving instance or incident. I'm sorry, instance.
Awesome. And here's another one. Can you describe how the UI for this tool was built?
Sure. Yeah. So it like I mentioned before, it's a single page AngularJS widget. It's a single widget on a single page. I have multiple directives, including services that I've created for as Angular dependencies, and script includes that pull all the data in as well. So the searching actually takes place. Actually, I see a new question. How are you able to? I was about to talk about search capabilities. So searching, I think I mentioned this briefly as well before. So I'm moving into the next question. I'm sorry, Lauren, unless you wanted to. Actually.
No, totally fine.
Okay, cool. So the search capabilities, like we mentioned before, are based on REST calls. So with those configurations that we showed you, we do all of our REST calls. So it's a basic auth that gets passed in. We are using 3 APIs. We're using the table API to pull information. We're using the attachment API to do some attachment stuff. And then we're actually using, because attachments, I can't remember what the limiting factor was, but there's something you can't do with attachments to the attachment API. I think it was remove them. So we had to do that through a scripted REST API. So we have a scripted REST API, and then we're using 2 out-of-the-box the table API as well as the attachment API. And so all that's done, when we go to search, we're basically in that search tool looking in those fields. So the transfer fields, like transfer from and transfer to, we're looking for records that match our instance and records that match our incident number. And that's basically it. It was key that we had those pieces of information, right? So we couldn't lose an incident that happened to be in the trail, because then we would never find it again. So, or it would take forever because we'd have to search an entire instance for something that may be related. So that, yeah, transfer information was key.
All right, well, that looks like that was all the questions. So that's all the time we have for today, but we'd like to announce the winner of our $50 Visa gift card. And it looks like the winner is Frank Garner. Congratulations, we'll email your prize to you directly. But don't worry if you didn't win today. Don't be discouraged. Every on-air webinar you attend for both GlideFast and our sister company Fair Code counts as an entry into our on-air grand prize giveaway of a mirror workout, a $1,500 value, and that winner will be selected at the end of June. Thank you to everyone for attending, and we hope you enjoyed. If you still have any more questions, feel free to tweet them at us, send them to us at info@glidefast.com, or reach out to any of the speakers from today's session. To see more sessions, visit glidefast.com and find the on-air section to sign up for more webinars coming. Thanks, everyone.